Hello everyone. Today I'm going to bring you a solved case that took 34 years to start getting some answers. On December 20th, 1984, 12-year-old Jonelle Mathews was performing in a holiday concert with her school choir, and her school was Franklin Middle School, and her family weren't at the concert. Jonelle's father was at his other daughter's basketball game, and Jonelle's mother had flown back east to be with her ill father. Around 8:15 that night, Jonelle got home to her house in Greeley, Colorado. She got a ride from her friend Deanne Ross and Deanne's dad. And shortly after 8:30, Jonelle answered a phone call and took a message for her father. She wrote it down. And the phone call was the last time anyone was known to have spoken to Jonelle. Jonelle's dad got home at 9:30 p.m. and the garage door was open, but there was nobody in the house. Jonelle's shoes and her shawl were near the heater in the family room. Then her older sister got home around 10 p.m. but had not seen her either. Their dad began to worry and he called police. They arrived around 10:15 and they found footprints in the snow that indicated that somebody had been peeping in the windows, but there were no signs of a struggle and no signs of forced entry. And with there having been snow on the ground, Jonelle's dad pointed out that it was highly unlikely that she would go very far without any shoes on. The Mathews family consisted of Jim and Gloria Mathews and their daughter Jennifer, who was a bit older than Jonelle. Jonelle was an adopted daughter. For several weeks after Jonelle disappeared, law enforcement were surveilling Jonelle's birth mother, Terry Martinez, and they never told her that her daughter had gone missing. In around 1994, after Jonelle had been declared, Gloria received a letter from Jonelle's birth mother requesting permission to visit Jonelle. So Jonelle's adoptive parents notified her about what happened, and their families became friends. In the years since Jonelle went missing, Jim and Gloria Mathews retired and they moved to Costa Rica, and Jonelle's older sister got married and moved out of Colorado. Then, 34 years after her disappearance, workers were working on a pipeline in Weld County, and on Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019, a little before 5 p.m., they discovered human remains. When the remains were first reported, a lot of people thought that they might be Terry Ackerman, who had been missing almost a year, but that was not the case. DNA evidence and the remnants of clothing that Jonelle Mathews had been wearing the night that she disappeared were all used to positively identify the remains as Jonelle Mathews. On September 13th, 2019, the Greeley Police Department made an announcement that there was a person of interest in Jonelle's. And that person of interest was Steven Pankey, who was a former Greeley resident, and he had lived about 2 miles from the Mathews home back in 1984. He went to the same church that the Mathews family went to. He also had a habit of watching the kids from Jonelle's school walking home from school. On October 13th of this year, it was announced that Steven Pankey had been indicted. The Mathews family stated that they experienced some closure when they learned Jonelle's remains had been found, and 10 years after Jonelle went missing, they had had a service for her in order to give themselves some form of closure, but being able to inter her remains meant a whole lot to them all. And then to have the answers about what happened to her, and to have Steven Pankey in jail and awaiting trial, that was even better. They are looking forward to getting justice for their daughter, Jonelle Mathews. When looking at the indictment, instead of going over all the charges, counts 1 through 5 of the indictment were committed in the following manner. Steven Dana Pankey took Jonelle Mathews from her family home without her consent and against her will on December 20th, 1984, between 8:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. He was armed with a Jonelle during the course of the He watched school children walk home from the middle school where Jonelle went to school. He demonstrated intimate familiarity with the neighborhood where Jonelle lived when he stated that 2 police officers lived in the same block as Jonelle during an interview in March of 1985. He attended the Sunnyview Church of the Nazarene, where the Mathews family also attended. He knew of and discussed a crucial piece of evidence from the Mathews house that was withheld from the public by law enforcement. Specifically, he mentioned in interviews that a rake was used to obliterate the shoe impressions in the snow. And Jonelle's cause of... And Steven Pankey owned a 1984. And he intentionally inserted himself into the investigation many times over the years, claiming that he had knowledge of the crime. In a 1999 pleading filed with the Idaho Supreme Court, he argued that if the court ruled in a certain fashion, it is reasonable for the appellant to believe he would get the penalty for revealing the location of Jonelle Mathews. He also wrote, "Without a deal, this case will never be solved." He also stated in a letter that was dated August 15, 2013, "About a week after the fact, I realized a blanket or comforter or quilt also disappeared from the Mathews home. Some experiences are hard to forget, but I must realize justice isn't always served and move on." He sent an alibi document to law enforcement in 2013. The letter detailed plans for the family trip to California, commencing on December 21st, 1984. The document contained false statements and superfluous details. Angela Hicks described the family trip commencing 2 days after Jonelle Mathews' disappearance on the 22nd as unexpected. She described that Steven dumped their family dogs prior to this trip and they were never seen again. On the drive home, she stated he uncharacteristically listened to the radio, searching for news accounts of Jonelle's disappearance. Upon arriving back in Greeley, he forced her to read the newspaper accounts about Jonelle to him. And she stated that when they finally arrived home on December 26, 1984, he immediately began digging in their yard, and approximately 2 days later, a car on their property burst into flames, which he then disposed at a local salvage yard. And during a church service in early 1985, Steven Pankey began muttering false prophet when the minister announced Jonelle Mathews would be found safe and returned home. He grew increasingly agitated and had to be removed from the church by parishioners. In 2008, Angela Hicks heard Steven say at his son's funeral, "I hope God didn't allow this to happen because of Jonelle Mathews." Steven told Angela Hicks in 1999 that the Sun Valley Police refused to believe he has information related to Jonelle's disappearance, and they refused to give him immunity in exchange for that evidence. And noticing Angela's confused expression, he remarked, "You don't think I could have hurt her, do you? She looked just like you." And he repeatedly searched for information about Jonelle on the internet, and subsequent to contact by Greeley police detectives in 2019, Steven Pankey attempted to delete all evidence of those searches from his electronic devices. In 1984, Steven Pankey lived approximately 2 miles from Jonelle, and the place where he lived was approximately 10 miles due north of the recovery area for Jonelle. And that was the gist of the indictment, and that is why Steven is currently in jail. Thank you for watching Another Day in the Car with JuleZ.